Chris, can you eat a whole Easter egg in one day?
I can eat it in about 1 minute, I think. The Easter eggs are
Well, we'll
pretty
see,
small
because
these
there's
days.
a bit of a challenge on Matt Chorley's show. Him and Lord Vasey tried to eat an Easter egg in 1 minute. I don't think they made it, but they had a race. You should ask to join them next year.
Yeah, I think I could probably do it. But yes, I don't think people should be worrying too much about eating a bit of chocolate once a year.
No, nor do I. Do you think it's right for the NHS to sort of point this out, or, you know, do they just need to get out of our lives and leave us alone a bit?
I would like them to get out of our lives. It's just one particular NHS mandarin over in Suffolk who came up with this bit of advice. What I found interesting, actually, was that most of the advice really was about telling people not to expect much healthcare over the bank holiday weekend. That was really the advice. It's the advice, actually, we get every Easter and have had for a few years, because you can't see a GP on today, you can't see one on Monday, and health services, A&E and so on, will be probably understaffed for the next 4 days. Now, that's really, I think, what these people should be focusing on. But instead, they tend to like talking particularly about food and obesity and chocolate and sugar, really, I think, as a displacement activity and distraction from the underwhelming service that the NHS gives us.
Well, yeah, and particularly those of us with children, it's a bit of fun. I don't think we need to be Easter egg shamed for wanting to eat an Easter egg. Something else the NHS is pretty active in is discouraging people from smoking. Rishi Sunak brought forward his ban on smoking to Parliament just before we broke for the Easter recess, and it will come back and be voted on very shortly after Easter, I believe. Do you think the Prime Minister's right to pursue his ban on anyone under the age of 15 ever being able to smoke in this country?
No, I think adults should be allowed to smoke. Now, obviously, Rishi Sunak doesn't think that, and presumably lots of other people don't think that too. But I think we should be very upfront about what's being proposed here. We're talking not about people who are going to be 15, but people who are going to be eventually 50. I think that somebody at any age over 18 should be allowed to buy tobacco products. I think it's a shame that the party of Winston Churchill is effectively going to ban, you know, the groom at a wedding, let's say, in 10 years' time from smoking a cigar. I think it's over the top. It's ridiculous. I think the very large black market in tobacco that the UK already has is going to go into overdrive. It is going into overdrive due to the incredible tax that's on cigarettes anyway. And eventually, the whole market will be illicit. And a large part of the vape market also will be illicit, because of course, he's talking about banning disposable vapes. So a lot of people don't realize make up 87% of the e-cigarette market. They're going to be completely banned. Tobacco is going to be progressively banned. I think it's going to be a real mess.
So I'm a reform smoker. I don't like smoking. I've managed to kick the habit, but I dislike smoking. But I also believe in freedom. I think this is absolutely the wrong thing for the government to do. So you're right, you'll have two 21-year-olds. One will have the right to buy cigarettes, the other one won't. Why should we divide people's rights just on the basis of age? I think it is completely wrong. And of course, if banning things worked, then of course we'd have no illegal drugs in this country, would we, Chris?
Well, that's right. I think something like 16% of 16 to 24-year-olds smoke cannabis. Cannabis has been illegal for nearly a century, but there's more young cannabis smokers than there is young tobacco smokers. So, yeah, obviously prohibition does not work in stamping out anything, really, as long as there is demand there. And I don't see demand for cigarettes and tobacco products disappearing completely anytime soon.
Well, I tell you what, I'll tell you something else that's quite dangerous. I haven't looked up the exact figures. Travelling via helicopter is particularly dangerous. I think it's the most dangerous form of transport after horse riding, which is also dangerous. So get ready, if you are 15, you may never get the opportunity to ride on a horse or fly in a helicopter. Let's move on. You also have done this. You've had a busy old week, really, and that's why we're so happy to have you on. You've been talking about our failure to properly understand the claim that Liz Truss crashed the economy. And I was looking, I think it was a tweet you put out that I spotted. You did a very helpful graph, which we can put on the screen. Do you want to explain this graph to our viewers and listeners who might have drunk the Kool-Aid that Liz Truss crashed the economy?
Yeah, so this is GDP over the last 15 years or so. You can see at the start of the graph the financial crisis, the big recession 2008, and you can see the massive collapse, the biggest or sharpest recession in 300 years in 2020 as a result of COVID. Then you can see where the arrow is. That's where Liz Truss had a brief premiership, and which, according to the Labour Party and lots of other people, she crashed the economy. Now, there is no technical definition of crashing the economy, but I think GDP is the best measure of the economy, and it clearly didn't crash when Liz Truss took over. You can see 2 crashes in the recent past, and nothing when Truss did her mini budget, which is what supposedly crashed the economy. The reality is that very little of the mini budget was ever implemented, so it couldn't have crashed the economy even if she wanted to. The bits that remained were the energy price guarantee and the abolition of the increase in national insurance, both of which had cross-party support, and most people seem to think it was a jolly good idea. That did require a bit more borrowing, but that did not crash the economy. It is true, mortgage rates went up for a month or two after the mini budget at a faster rate than they would have done otherwise. But there seems to be a lot of people who believe that we've got high inflation, or we've been through a period of high inflation. We've got relatively high interest rates and relatively high mortgage rates as a result of Liz Truss. Well, you only need to look around the rest of the world to see exactly the same kind of problems, which can't credibly be blamed, I would suggest, on Liz Truss.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I want to bring that graph up. I just saw it this way. I haven't seen it before, and it is like a new sort of belief here in the UK that was an economic crash. It clearly wasn't. It was barely a wiggle on the graph, but that doesn't mean that people weren't deeply impacted by it, especially by those increases in mortgage rate. Thank you very much for joining us. No nannying on eggs, no nannying on smoking, and let's all make sure we have a look at that graph.